Hello everybody, welcome back. Good morning. Let's have a quick look, not just at Bitcoin, but I want to give you a kind of an overview of how everything's going to play out. Now, you know me, I'm relatively bullish at the moment. I still think that the 4-year cycle is still in play. There's every model, every popular model, whether it's 4-year cycle, extended cycles, lengthening cycles, whatever you want to call it. And the stock to flow model, everything seems to be pretty much intact. And so with that in mind, I'm still quite bullish. The weekly on Bitcoin looks pretty bullish, and we'll go into a little bit more detail on this. We're above all major moving averages, inside the accumulation zone, still yet to break out and find a support on the $49,000 to $50,000 zone. And so for the moment, we've still got an opportunity to accumulate at what is an accumulation zone. Whether we go to 100,000 or beyond, it's not for me to say where it's going to go, but it should continue to go up from here. There's nothing to be concerned about on this chart. And second to that, if we have a look at the total market cap, it looks more bullish than Bitcoin, which lends itself to the market as a whole pumping. And not just Bitcoin taking the lead. Now, obviously, there could be rotations within the market. So this is new money entering the market. There could be rotations within this market, and that's where we would bring the Bitcoin dominance chart into play. And this does seem to be finding a support at this, I suppose it's a multi-year level of support. So we found support here in the bear market. We found support here in the dump, where you might be finding support here right now, meaning that there could be a rotation from altcoins into Bitcoin. But generally speaking, the market looks quite healthy and it's in a decent position. This is still a bearish chart, even though we're at support. And I've been, I suppose, I've always been bullish on alts, especially when we were hedging into them over here. So we got pretty much the bottom of alts and still in a lot of those positions now, which is why I'm more relaxed about if this rotation takes place or not. But generally, on the way down, I've always been expecting a bounce. I've always been on the back foot waiting for a bounce. Never got one here. Looking for one here. Never got one here. Looking for one here. Never got one here. Looking for one here and here. Never got one. Looking for one here. And we finally got one. And then we got broken down again. So I'm always looking for the bounce. Not because I'm a massive fan of Bitcoin. It's because I know what can happen when a rotation begins, which can be quite nasty for altcoins. So there's nothing wrong with hedging against altcoins back into Bitcoin, taking some of those amazing profits, just to be safe rather than sorry. But this is still a bearish chart, even though we're at support. Anyway, I've bored you to death with my bullish outlook of the market and of Bitcoin, and of I suppose being wary about how far you ride certain altcoins up before you take profit into Bitcoin. The main thing I wanted to look at is the overall grand picture of things. So as I said in a bit earlier, that the market would appear to be still consistent with the 4-year market cycle of Bitcoin and the stock to flow model, stock to flow ratio, which does point to I suppose $100,000 and beyond price to Bitcoin, right? But a lot of the things that we overlook, I suppose, not most people, I think a lot of people do think about this, and this isn't the be all and end all. It's just one component to the big picture, which is the dollar index, right? So if we have a commodity, an indice, any kind of asset, including Bitcoin, that's largely pegged to the dollar because it's traded with Tether, then the price of the dollar does have an impact on those commodities, stocks, and other assets, like I say, with Bitcoin and altcoins, right? So if we have a dollar that's increasing in value, it will have a potentially negative effect on whatever's traded against it, right? And the way I'm viewing the Dixie at the moment is it is actually showing signs of strength. Doesn't mean that it's going to have a full reversal all the way back up to post-pandemic times, but I think inevitably it will do that. And I know that goes against a lot of the Twitter feed and the idea that the dollar's going to go to zero and America's going to be bankrupt and stuff. I mean, based on the chart alone, it doesn't quite look that way. I think inevitably, if they carry on with their shenanigans, it will go down further. And I think when we look at the chart based on a monthly and a weekly, it does look like it still wants to go down. But we're talking months at that stage. In the very short term, I think we're still looking for another retest at these higher levels, right? So this is throughout the month of September. maybe into October. But we do have little cracks in this, so I think that this is going to likely push up a little further, back up to the 94 to maybe even as high as 95. That would be my absolute top on this one. Probably a little lower, but 95 would be the absolute top. 94.5. And then we find our rejection. If this takes place in the within September, beginning of October, it will offer downwards pressure to crypto and anything that's trading in. It's a Bitcoin and crypto, meaning that Bitcoin could obviously break out during this time. It is its own thing, but it would have a much easier ride if the Dixie broke down too. And I think that the Dixie is pushing up to this level, breaking out from there. We're going up to 94 to potentially 95 before it actually starts to break down again properly. In the short term, then the Dixie will likely find its way back into a downtrend until it finds another support. Maybe and probably at a higher level than these lows, right? So we've got a low here and a higher low here. I think we're about to form a higher high and then another higher low, all based on long-term time frames, weeks, maybe months. And if we have a quick look at the weekly, we can see that essentially what we're getting here is a top, a bottom, a lower high, and we will likely form a lower low at some point, down the line. But in the short term, I still think that we're looking to reclaim some of these zones, making our way up to 94 to potentially 95. Anyway, that is the Dixie, and for those who, I suppose, it's all very speculative, I suppose, because there's a lot that goes into the Dixie's price rather than just its chart. There's things that can be said and done by the Fed which can change the whole outlook on this. But looking at the weekly, I would think that next year we will actually have a more significant uptrend on this one. Breaking out from the 95 and beyond, and that, in my, the way I'm choosing to view the market would be suitable for what next year would be likely be for crypto, which would be a bear market, right? I know the lengthening cycles and things say that we will have an extended bull run, and that's fine, and that's yet to be seen. But the 4-year market cycle would suggest that towards the end of this year, into the very beginning of next, would be where the likely peak would be for the crypto market. And then we would either enter into a 6, 9 or 12-month bear market, and that would work out well for the Dixie if the Dixie decides to increase. Remember, the Dixie's not bothered by Bitcoin. The Dixie does its own thing, but crypto is bothered by the Dixie. So if we reach a peak naturally within a 4-year market cycle, and the Dixie continues to increase throughout 2022 before it finds itself at a new high, before it starts to go down to a brand new low, that would work out almost perfectly for the 4-year market cycle anyway. An increased valued dollar throughout 2022 finding itself a peak at some point in 2023 where a new bull market would begin for Bitcoin would be perfect. But again, this is a very, very large outlook, and we don't really, we can think about this, and obviously there's going to be a lot going on in between all this. This is going to be one of those things that we have to check on, on a monthly basis, really, to see if it's working out. So far the Dixie is looking okay for a short-term pump move up to about 94 to potentially 95, but the cracks for, I should say cracks. I think about it in a negative term when the dollar goes up, but actually, for all those Americans, it's actually a good thing. The bulls basically have the upper hand coming into next year, I would see, with the Dixie, despite what the money printing and all the stuff you see on Twitter and YouTube about the dollar going to zero. Don't really see that happening next year, but the real bear market for the Dixie will probably be seen around 2023, based upon the way that this chart is panning out. This is just a weekly. If you bring it to a monthly, it makes even more sense when we see that basically large moving averages being rejected from the center of the monthly Bollinger Band here would suggest that we could find a breakout, but an absolute breakdown is probably more likely over the long period of time. This is still a bearish chart on a monthly and on a weekly, but it's just the daily that seems to be offering some potential, and dailies can transpire over to weekly. So we'll have to wait and see, but it seems to match the long-term projection of crypto market cycle with the way that the Dixie kind of looks on the long term. I think that they will basically they will collaborate to make a larger bear market. it's still just, it's probably going to be smaller than the ones we've seen in the past for Bitcoin, but it works out. It definitely works out. This is the last. This is where Bitcoin found its parabolic high before, in the face of a really devastating pullback for the Dixie. We found ourselves a nice big bounce until the pandemic hit, where we basically found ourselves coming all the way down, but not creating a lower low. So an interesting situation, but this is why I'm not massively bearish on the Dixie, especially on the short term, and suppose through next year. I'm not massively bearish on it. I'm actually pretty bullish on it next year. So, I know that was boring, but sometimes it's worth thinking about these sort of things. I've always stuck to the fact that we are in the 4-year market cycle for Bitcoin, because it's always been in one, and we still appear to be in one now. This is why I'm relatively bullish on the market and on Bitcoin in general, but I'll be pretty cautious coming into next year about how this is going to play out, because of not just the 4-year market cycle, but the way that the Dixie looks on the long term. And then, obviously, when we come into 2023, I expect the party to begin all over again for cryptocurrency, whether you hodl throughout the bear market just in case we don't even get one. Do you know what I mean? Who knows? We just don't know. It's a very young asset, and so because of that, I always say it when we do these live streams and look at these charts, which are literally a few weeks old or whatever. We can't really take them for what we can look at them and go, okay, that makes sense. It looks good, but it's young. It's not very old. Now, I know Bitcoin's over 10 years old now, but it's 12 years old, I think, isn't it now? So, or coming up for that. So, it's not the oldest thing in the world. And cycles fail all the time, but so far the cycle hasn't failed. So we have that, in the bag. It's never failed a cycle. There's a lot of interest in Bitcoin at the moment, and so there's no reason for us to assume that a market cycle is going to fail. You have to play it until it fails, and then you accept the fact that despite having using all the TA and the models that are out there, this one actually didn't work out. But for the moment, it does appear to be working out, and the Dixie would appear to be causing or allowing for this downtrend in the short term. But the way the Dixie looks, a rejection around 94 to 95, whether it's beginning of next month or a little later on, will then allow for this bull market to complete its 4-year cycle wherever we get to from there, whether it's $100,000, $200,000, $100 million, trillion, billion dollars. I don't know. I'm not here to tell you what the targets would be, but the momentum would still appear to be up for Bitcoin and the market in general, and I would expect the bull market to actually go into a bull run, just as it usually does in the fourth quarter. So we're getting towards the end of it now. Bitcoin's looking pretty boring, but if a rotation kicks in and the Dixie breaks down, then Bitcoin could potentially reach levels that seem inconceivable at this moment in time. There's a lot of money in altcoins right now, and the Bitcoin dominance is quite low. And this is why I always reference it, because if Bitcoin dominance is low, and the lower it goes, it is exciting for us holding altcoins, but it does run the risk of a rotation from altcoins into Bitcoin, which would obviously lift this chart up. We would bounce from, like I say, reasonably low levels, historically low in a way, and the price of Bitcoin would increase very fast, because there's more money going into it in general. We see over $1 trillion these last couple of months gone back into Bitcoin, well, into the market in general. But if there's a rotation, it means that between the altcoin market cap and Bitcoin market cap, there will be more leaving altcoins going into Bitcoin. So whatever Bitcoin increased in the short term while that trillion entered the market, we saw an 80% increase in value over a 49-day period, and like I say, over $1 trillion entered the market. Most of it, ever so slightly more of it into altcoins, and the rest into Bitcoin, causing an 80% move. If we see the rotation from altcoins, even if it's just small portions of that, like let's just say 250 billion, half a trillion, go back into Bitcoin from altcoins, plus new money coming into it, it would suggest that we pump another 50 80, 100 or more percent for Bitcoin. So that would lead us up to pretty decent highs. From the breakdown there, it's a 90% move from the breakdown here. If we go into a blue sky breakout, there's not enough people selling, more people buying. 100% would bring us up to $121,000. I'm not saying that these are the price targets. I'm saying that what I'm saying is if we put all the things together, so we've got a bullish outlook, on the crypto market cap. We've also got a potential bounce from the Bitcoin dominance. We've also got a temporary rejection for the Dixie. A little later on down the line this year, it does all seem to sort of melt into one outlook, which is that Bitcoin will probably end up going higher than we expect, or higher than I expect. I know that a lot of people expect, $500,000 or whatever, but higher than I expect, which for me is between $80,000 to $100,000. That is my thoughts on it anyway. But overall, the market in general is looking much healthier than Bitcoin. If we think about the total market cap here, we are forming what would be a very bullish situation with a cheeky span above the price action above the cloud, the conversion baseline above the cloud not yet crossed. If we get this crossed, this would mean a very decent signal on a weekly, which should continue for like I say, several weeks to months, lifting us up to brand new highs on this, pointing to potentially doubling where that cross forms. So we could be talking $4 to $5 trillion market cap across the board for cryptocurrency. Anyway, long video, relatively boring I imagine for most people, but I thought I'd make it anyway. I hope you have a nice day and take it easy.